The Gallows is a Blumhouse Productions movie, which means that it's going to have a very interesting idea, but they obviously go the route of making it as cheap as possible, and many times it just ruins the movie with whatever gimmick they're trying to throw in, because as you know, they've done a lot of horror movies, and they've also done Whiplash. However, this one has a premise that is very interesting, very cheap to make, but honestly, it's also very dumbed down. Now, I'm not saying that I completely hated this movie. There is an element of it that I really like, that I actually think is solid, but there's a lot of dumb stuff that is really hard to, you can't even defend it. It is just really dumb, because they're obviously going the route of making this as cheap as possible. I mean, it all takes place in one place, and that's at the school. They do it found footage style, which we know is the cheapest way to film. The actors in this movie, those are the same names that the characters have. Now, in case you don't know what the movie is about, in 1993, this school was putting on a play called The Gallows, and where a guy named Charlie accidentally got hung by one of the props because they decided to use actual rope, which makes me wonder if there was a gun in the play, would they have used a real gun? However, 20 years later, they decide, you know what, we know a kid died with this play, but we're still going to bring it back because it's a big part of our school. Just like a lot of people are like, yeah, the Confederate flag has to do with slaves, but let's just still keep that around. So you have 4 characters. One of them is named Pfeiffer, and she's the one who, when you look at her, you know that she's really bossy, and she is the one who just wants to get this thing together. You then have the High School Musical aspect of it, and where it's not Troy Bolton or Chad, but it's these 2 guys who aren't necessarily, or one of them isn't the nicest, but the other one is pretty much a pushover. He's doing the play because not only is it mandatory in the school, but he likes Pfeiffer, so he's there for the lead role. The dude behind the camera, however, is supposed to be more obnoxious than even the guy who was holding the camera in Cloverfield, and I know a lot of people don't like him. I don't think he was that bad in my eyes, but you definitely don't have a liking to him or his girlfriend, who also plays a part in the film. Now, you have 30 minutes in this movie where the guy, the jock who's just in charge of filming things, is literally just filming things, making fun of people for 30 minutes until it gets to that point where they decide to make this plan that the night before the actual play, to not embarrass themselves and actually have to do it, they're going to break into the school and just mess up the set. And that's where things get a little interesting. Now, I'll say 2 good things about this movie. Actually, 3, since one of them is a part of the explanation that I want to talk about later on. But 2 things is that they use inanimate objects to make you scared. And I know that that seems like a very dumb idea, but that's also something that was done with dolls and other creepy things, that they add an element to it. Here, since they're very cheap, they just show you rope and they want you to be scared with it. They just don't add enough for you to actually be scared of the rope, and they don't add symbolism to it. Another real cool thing that they're able to do is actually have these sort of vantage points where there's 2 cameras going on. So one guy is filming, and then something else happens to the other guy, and we go back to actually see what happened to that person. That being said, let's get into the negatives, because there's a lot of dumb stuff in this movie. Now, of course, you have the characters who aren't necessarily the most fleshed out, and it's ironic that one of them can't act in the play. He also can't act in the movie. But then there's the whole idea of picking apart what shots they actually have in the film, because it's obviously found footage. And you have that whole idea where they always have to tell you, oh, we need to film everything. So they're filming everything. But you also have that concept of when they're being chased, why is it that they're still running like this? So there's a view of everything that they're seeing. Why aren't they going full stealth mode and just running away like that? Probably the dumbest concept that they want you to completely forget to be able to still get it to be found footage is that this guy who's filming is supposed to turn in all of the footage to the school. So when they decide to break into the school, why would he still be filming that? That then leads to all of the forced jump scares. And in case you don't know, jump scares aren't necessarily the greatest thing. That isn't necessarily what a horror should rely on. A horror should be able to build these tense moments, not just jump up and scare you so a bunch of the teenagers who are buying these tickets can be like, oh, I felt a rush, that was crazy. No, here, they are really horribly put together. Literally, there is one where the guy just leaves the camera on, and then he scares the camera. He's literally jumping up to scare the audience. It makes no sense. On top of that, a lot of the scares are, if you were to turn around and look at something, and this is a found footage movie, meaning that there is no score, when you turn around, there is no dun that plays. Here, it's always the same setup. It gets really quiet. They turn, nothing. They turn, nothing. And on the last one, it's supposed to frighten you mainly because they have a big dun that's just coming out to get you. And as we always know with horror films, someone actually takes this and edits it together. Someone literally in the police department, as they show you that all of this was, found footage, takes the time to actually piece it together to make it a movie. It makes no sense. However, while it's definitely not a great film, I do want to get into the part where I actually think it's pretty solid for the most part, and the reason why this movie had potential and it didn't go anywhere. So this is in the spoiler territory, starting in 3, 2, 1. Now, getting into what really happens in this movie, you obviously have in 1993 a guy named Charlie got hung mainly because he was supposed to be the hangman. He did become the hangman. However, it was actually Reese's dad who was supposed to be the guy in the main role. He called in sick for whatever reason. Don't know if it was on purpose or not. But pretty much that caused Charlie, who was the understudy, to actually be in that role. He dies. He seeks revenge 20 years later, mainly because his girlfriend, who was watching as well, was supposedly pregnant, and that child ends up becoming Pfeiffer, which, if I am correct, I believe it might say 2010 or 2011 that the stuff was put together, which would make sense for her, but if it's actually supposed to be 2013 or 2015, that means that this girl is a senior and is in her 20s. However, 20 years later, it is Pfeiffer who is the one who is seeking revenge to be able to bring back that play and actually orchestrate everything to happen in that way. And she, as they say in the beginning of the movie, is the one who was able to convince everybody to actually make it possible. And maybe it does work since her dad has supernatural powers there at the school and people have been hearing things. You then have the creepy lady who's actually sitting there and watching all of the practices, who is supposed to be the mom and the girlfriend of Charlie, but then you have when everything goes down, and that's obviously Pfeiffer, who knew that these jocks were going to do what they were going to do. She sets up, obviously, the door being open, and when she sees the car actually there, she can come in and be like, okay, this is when things are going down. If Pfeiffer wasn't able to actually get him there that night, a lot of people are saying, oh, it's very coincidental, but I believe that Pfeiffer and Charlie would have still done something the day after when the play actually happened, and then he would have died that way. However, it turned out that they actually wanted to vandalize the school, and that's where things go down. You then have that final scene where they're finishing off the play, and it gets very, very cheesy, obviously, because he finishes his roles. You have that whole Birdman thing going on, where the kid in the beginning is saying his lines, and that's obviously what ends up becoming true. However, at the end of it, you still sort of ask yourself, why kill everybody else? Why kill the cops if more people are going to be coming? How is that Charlie is still able to haunt outside of the school when he wasn't doing that for 20 years? And why does every Blumhouse picture, like Unfriended and everything else, have to end with the cheesiest shot of the monster just going dun 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 towards the screen? All that being said, I actually didn't hate the movie when I came out watching it, but now that I explained all of this in the movie, I'm actually going to say it's actually really bad. You should not check this movie out. However, as always, I am curious your thoughts if you're able to check out this movie, whether you liked it or not. We can discuss it down below in the comments, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.